we are also, making sure that we ship the best products for both restaurants and suppliers. So I don't believe that it's a trade-off that we need to decide between one and the other. I think my job and my co-founder's job it's one or two, if you want to put it that way. Keep on hiring the best profiles who are better than us. And then the second thing, really empowering them to keep on building products and projects that will allow Katoo to get better.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. Today, I am being joined by Diogo Cunha, co-founder and CEO of Katoo. Diogo is a Portuguese operator turned founder. After starting his career at Boston Consulting Group in Spain, Diogo joined Uber on the driver growth team for Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Croatia. He launched new cities, increased driver conversion by 50% and more, and led efforts for the launch of new products. He's a travel fanatic, has been to more than 65 countries, and is always looking for the best street food wherever he goes. Diogo Cunha, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, all the way from Portugal. How are you?
Hey, Michael. It's great to be here. I'm great. What about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here with me. I'm really excited to talk to you about your own journey, but specifically about your startup, Katoo. I hope I'm saying it correctly, but dealing with restaurants and suppliers and the relationship there. And obviously I'm fascinated by the restaurant industry. A lot of people are, and I'm really interested in diving deep into, what it's like to run a restaurant, but from, more of a management perspective, and what are some of the challenges and the gaps that you've discovered in examining this vertical. So, Diogo, maybe tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to work in the restaurant space.
Yeah, so very, very shortly. So, like I told you before, I'm originally Portuguese. I ended up moving to Spain 5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, to do consulting at Boston Consulting Group, where I worked with my co-founder. Actually, the two of us know each other from before because we also worked together in London. So, big coincidence that we ended up working together twice, but still. And so there did a lot of different projects, but actually one of the ones that I liked the most was for a very large quick service restaurant chain that, was about to be acquired by a private equity group. That's how I first got into the restaurant industry. Then a couple of years later, I was at Uber on the driver acquisition team for Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Croatia. Also had a lot of fun. But that's mostly when I started, falling in love with operations and really making things work in big industries where there's a huge problem. And so back in the days when we were at BCG, my co-founder and we were working for these really big corporations. And, we were a bit obsessed about the fact that these corporations had to serve their employees. But in most cases, they were in remote places in the middle, like typical 25 kilometers away from Madrid. And the catering services there were very limited. And, delivery was not such a huge thing back in 2017. And it wouldn't really, even in those cases, food wouldn't get there. So we looked at each other and we said, okay, let's open a dark kitchen where we focus on servicing, on like almost like a catering company for large enterprises in Spain that they would then subsidize for their own employees as part of their sort of benefit plans. And so the first thing...
And just for clarification, dark kitchen would mean not having a physical store, but having just a kitchen as a sort of a back-end service to cook more cheaper.
So we didn't mean so much like creating an actual restaurant inside these enterprise campuses, which a lot of companies do, and it's a super successful model. So I'm not sure you know Banco Santander, one of the largest banks in the world, but the largest in Spain. So they have a campus with, it's gigantic. They even have a golf course inside their campus in Madrid. And so they have a lot of restaurants inside, out of which a couple are, operated by companies who have also restaurants in the city center. But we wanted a different approach. We wanted something that, you would live in different buildings. So sort of a dark kitchen inside these campuses. And then for the smaller ones, a dark kitchen in the center, which we then distribute to these. And at that moment, we were looking for the Amazon between restaurants and suppliers, in our sort of naive way, and we didn't find it. So we started deep diving into the space, like who does what, what are the main problems, what are the main pain points, and we found out that there was a huge opportunity there, and so we started doing it a couple of years later. But
And so walk me through some of the first steps of you researching the industry and realizing, okay, there's this need, there's this gap, and the solution that you're bringing to the restaurant scene.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good question. So the first step to us was very clear. I mean, someone must be doing this somewhere, right? And so we started deep diving at who does what. I mean, I have a lot of friends doing VC. And so we were really trying to understand, because after all, I think a founder cannot fall in love with a solution. A founder can fall in love with a problem. And so who out there is trying to solve this problem? And we saw a lot of different models. I mean, we saw a couple of people that were doing the farm to table models. In the US, there's a super famous one called Cheetah. We saw a couple of people that directly wanted to open the marketplace. So, you get suppliers and you get restaurants on the other side, and you try for them to communicate. And then we were seeing people trying to solve this in a sort of different approach, which is trying to use suppliers to get to more restaurants. But what was failing was that, after all, if you're basically trying to ensure a communication tool between restaurants and suppliers, but you only work with X number of suppliers, you end up not developing a good enough tool, because restaurants, they can only order to 2 or 3 suppliers through that. So you're just an extra complication.
You need a big marketplace,
exactly.
Yes.
So we inverted the equation. What we said was, look, why don't we simply, a bit like a dog chasing cars, why don't we just create an amazing tool for restaurants? We don't really know where this is heading, but we basically start with a tool that substitutes their classic Excel templates and through which they can order to all of their suppliers. The beauty about it is that you get great engagement, but more than anything is that you get your food into the restaurant store. And so you can start really understanding, what are the main problems? How does it really work? How does it work on the other side? So that was the first thing. We didn't need the suppliers to be on the platform, in the sense that we were just creating a super easy to use tool for restaurants that, would allow them to order in a much faster, error-free way that would then send an email to the suppliers. This was the first step on how we started. Then as we started, do you want me to tell you the second process or the second part? And then as we started developing the tool, what happens is that, you have these suppliers that for 3 months have been receiving emails saying restaurant X powered by Katoo. And they start coming to us and they're like, who are you? What is this Katoo thing? Like, do you have anything for us? And that was the second step. We said, well, we don't yet, but we are developing it. So let's sit down together and let's see, how we can really help you. And that is the second.
So just to make sure that I understood correctly, Diogo, the idea was that you're going to allow restaurants to see who the suppliers are without them yet enrolling into the platform, ordering from them through you. And it's not actually placing an order, but it's more of like a letter of intent, right? A request for fulfillment. And then you're actually getting the 2-sided marketplace without having to get both sides enrolled in the solution.
In a way, yes, but with their current suppliers. So there's no discovery component involved already. It's the same thing as to say, all the cool productivity tools that are now where you can basically send messages through Twilio. It's the same thing as if I have sort of an Excel powered by Twilio that sends an email to the supplier.
Got it. Okay. Very, very cool. And that's how, so you're not necessarily helping them discover new suppliers, but you're helping streamline their communication with existing suppliers. You're finding product market fit and saying, okay, we're figuring out how to best have the communication between restaurant and suppliers. And then you're going to deal with the discovery in the second phase.
Precisely. To me, it's really about believing that if you own the buyers and you create a tool that they keep on coming back and they keep on coming using, but especially a tool that is, it's a very important part of the backbone of the restaurant. Like, I won't go as far as to say that it's easy to create a tool that increases revenue for restaurants, but the value proposition is super clear. And the problem is that churn ends up being high in a lot of cases. But if you create a tool that really becomes an essential part of the day-to-day of the restaurant, from which they order to all of their suppliers, then your possibilities are limitless. I mean, our 3 months churn, for example, is below 5%. Our GMV cohorts are incredibly healthy. And it's just the fact that, it has a viral effect because the referral rates are just insane and we don't pay anything for that. So it's really, our obsession was becoming a tool that restaurants really love and keep on using and keep on coming back. And when I mean restaurants, I don't mean about, the Stanford guy that all of a sudden opened a restaurant chain because he liked tacos. I mean the classical chef who's normally non-tech savvy, normally has, Facebook and perhaps WhatsApp on their phone, which is widely popular in Europe. I know that not so much in the States. So it's really about creating a tool for them that they love and then start building from them on. That's our whole mentality. But like I was telling you before, the thing is that the suppliers are getting our emails, and with that, they start coming to us and they say, hey, getting your emails is already a lot better than receiving, the messy voicemails that I used to receive at 4 a.m. Because you need to remember that the way that things are normally done is chef closes the kitchen and walks through his not the warehouse, but the kitchen, calling suppliers one by one and leaving voicemails. And they normally don't say, bring me 2 boxes of 4 kilos each of tomato, but I want cherry tomato. They say, hi, bring me 2 of tomato. And the following day at 4 a.m., you get into a supplier's office and there are 5, 10 people with headphones all day long, listening to voicemails and translating these by manually inputting data on an ERP. At Katoo, we are turbocharging their operations by, connecting their ERP with a mobile app that we have. So the step at which we are now, and suppliers came to us asking us for this is, why do you need that sort of data entry? Why don't we connect with the supplier's ERP? And we allow, number one, for that data entry to be completely extinguished in the sense that it goes directly into their ERP. Mistakes to be solved because, the catalog, it's automatically updated by what's available on the ERP or not. And same thing goes for pricing. And last but not least, even though we don't allow discovery as of yet through new suppliers, what we do allow is discovery on your current supplier. What else does your supplier have to offer you? So what we are doing now is, really focusing on building the best sort of CRM between suppliers and restaurants and their existing relationship, just making sure that it flows flawlessly. No mistakes, fast, efficient, and in a nice way, which I think is very important.
And so what is the next phase in this scene? It sounds that you've really hit the nail on helping, restaurant chefs streamline their process of requesting those supplies. It's been very meaningful for the suppliers to be able to get the request in a consistent and in an easy to understand format. What is the next level of this game?
So I think, there's a lot of different layers. One of the ones that I think is, I do believe in the power of automating this even further on the restaurant side. So I really believe that we can go into a step where, we do predictive ordering. We do something that as of now is only seen in sort of like ERPs for large corporations. We want to democratize this and really make it a reality for restaurants, for them to be more efficient and save even further on costs. We are already halfway there, but we will double down on this. And on the supplier side, we really want to ensure that we also help them, with 2 different things. Number one, that we bring that sort of intelligence, especially with perishable products for which they are, for example, overstocked. Like, for you, doesn't it make sense, for example, if these pears are getting bad, doesn't it make sense for you to actually do a broadcast to all of your customers at the 50% cut because you just need to sell this? That is one. And then the second one, which we are getting more and more into is, I'm an ops guy. I'm very focused on getting ops right. And it's really, for example, the whole invoicing and financing part, it's an absolute mess. There's so much to be done there. And we need to continue on evolving towards this direction, really becoming the number one customer relation tool for suppliers to interact with their restaurants. But in the very, very long term, the vision is very clear. I'm a big believer that in 2050, kitchens will be something that will practically only exist for the wealthy people, They're expensive from a real estate standpoint. And then I'm an economist. I lived in Singapore when I was young. And I'm not sure you've been to Singapore, but it's cheaper to eat out in food halls rather than cooking at home. And to me, as an economist, it makes sense. Like, why are people cooking? And so if we believe that the world is walking towards that direction, we must empower restaurants and suppliers to interact in a much more efficient way so that the food supply chain becomes cheaper, more efficient, and more transparent for everyone. That is where we are going towards. It's just that we are starting by solving a small part of the equation.
And today you're starting this based out of Madrid, correct?
Exactly.
And so is there a plan to expand horizontally geographically to other locations? Yeah. Is there a plan to expand vertically into a deeper relationship and solve more problems for the restaurants versus suppliers? And what are sort of the trade-offs that you are thinking through as you're deciding strategically what to do next?
Both. So actually we're doing both. So we are already in 3 countries and we'll open between 2 and 3 more until June next year. And then the second component, which I think it's important, is we are also, making sure that we ship the best products for both restaurants and suppliers. So I don't believe that it's a trade-off that we need to decide between one and the other. I think my job and my co-founder's job it's 1 or 2, if you want to put it that way. Keep on hiring the best profiles who are better than us. And then the second thing, really empowering them to keep on building products and projects that will allow Katoo to get better. Like the strategic direction and the North Star is 1. That doesn't mean that there cannot be, mini projects inside the company that allow us to go at the speed of light, which is how we need to go. I don't believe that we need to choose between one and the other, especially now in an environment where the market is full of capital. I think that our job as founders is to be ambitious enough to know that we don't need to choose between one and the other, is to know that we must go at full speed.
Right. And so, looking back at, the two-setter marketplace and your entrance into the restaurant scene, what are some non-trivial things that came about that you discovered that, perhaps the average person who just enjoys going to restaurants wouldn't necessarily think about?
Yeah. So number 1 is getting to know the chef, which in most cases is the person who's placing the orders and, who's after all the user of our app. So it's completely different from the manager that you normally see. It is the first thing. So understanding who the real person is. Fun fact about Katoo, for the last year, we've been working inside the restaurant. So in our Madrid office, the team needs to go through the kitchen every day to get into their tables, which is quite unique. It was our 6th user, if I'm not mistaken, or 5th. And so, we basically decided on a setup. Now that we're growing the team, we will unfortunately need to leave. That is the first one. Second, it's really about how messy supplier deliveries are, because something that you would find amazing is that supplies are constantly coming in. Like the average restaurant has 10, 15 suppliers, and they came in at the first one at 8 a.m., second one at 10 a.m. when you're already doing veggie chopping, third one at 12 where you're already serving the first meals, and they come and you just tell them to go upstairs and leave it somewhere. And so That is something that you only understand once you know the industry and you understand the pain, because people in the restaurants can't even check that, what was delivered is actually what they ordered. So that is the second one. And third one is, it's crazy, but Michael, like really crazy how much people work in the industry and how much effort they dedicate. It's an incredibly tough job that is, many times overlooked, but that I deeply, deeply respect. I've always been like that. I'm the sort of nerd guy with a lot of Notion guides of all the restaurants that I've been to, broken by price range and everything. But now I felt even more in love with the people who work in the industry, which I deeply, deeply admire. And we had chefs that came to work at Katoo, for example, because they felt so in love with our product that they wanted to evangelize it. But I also know that it's because their old job is it's very tough. Not a lot of people can handle it.
Very, very cool. Diogo, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your perspective and insights with me. I have a few short last questions, and I want you to take me back to your childhood. And what really fascinated you as a kid? Before tech, before investments, before startups, what really fascinated you?
Yeah, so this one will sound a bit strange, but it's a mix between history and geopolitics. Maybe it's because of the fact that I'm Portuguese, and our history has always shown us that, like, being close to the sea, and also the fact that we couldn't expand through land because we were close to Spain, which was a more powerful empire, to say so at the time. We had no other chance but to go look out for the world, and that's why we opened like the first real big trade route to India, and we disrupted the Silk Road. And so I was always very passionate about, or sort of fermented by this. And then I got passionate about geopolitics and how geography really shaped countries in the way that, they design their strategies and their empires. I really, really liked it, and I still really like it, and read a lot of books about it, to be honest.
Very, very cool. And what inspires you today in your daily life?
Yeah, so the sort of cliche answer, but that is true, on the one hand, is chefs and the restaurant entrepreneurs that I work with. It's crazy the speed at which, you can go from being the hottest thing in town to shutting down in a year. And I'm not even talking about Corona. I'm just talking about because trends change at such a fast pace. But also, I would also go as far as saying, and some people, this is a bit, some people don't understand this, but like high-level athletes, especially football players, normally, there's this sort of like intellectual feeling around like football, 22 people plus 4 referees running around the ball. But, I played football myself when I was younger. And I deeply, deeply admire someone who at the age of 18, 19 goes from, in many cases, like complicated backgrounds to complete starlight, and you can be a star from one day to the other. And the following day you get injured and you're on the bench for God knows how long. To me, the career of these sort of athletes, it's very similar to the founders' careers. And, I really, really respect it. And it's something that normally in this tech world, you sort of see some, disconnection with it and sort of like intellectual sort of, superiority, which I fully disagree. I think that people have different sort of virtues, and you just need to understand them and respect them.
Very, very cool. And what are 3 words you would choose to describe yourself?
Okay. First one is executor. I get it done, no matter what, and I fall in love with. The less sexy it is, the more I fall in love with. Passionate. I get incredibly obsessed with problems to be solved. And the last one, which it's ambition. Like I'm very, very ambitious. Always have been, always will be. And, I believe great companies can be built anywhere in the world, no matter the country, the background, whatever. You just need to keep on hiring people who are just as hungry as you are, smarter than you are, and with a no diva attitude. Someone who's willing to do, whatever you ask them to do, as long as it is solving problems.
Amazing. Amazing. Diogo, thank you so much.
Michael.
This was wonderful.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for the time and energy, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.